Why Chelsea lost 1-3 to Brighton. A comprehensive tactical and analytical breakdown. 1. Introduction, match context and stakes. When Chelsea welcomed Brighton to Stamford Bridge, the expectation was that the Blues would continue building on their uneven but promising start under their new manager. Brighton, however, arrived with a reputation as one of the most tactically adaptable sides in the Premier League, often thriving against Big Six clubs with their fluid positional rotations and aggressive pressing. The final scoreline, Chelsea 1, Brighton 3, does not fully reveal the balance of the contest. For more than an hour, Chelsea were the more composed and threatening side, even taking a deserved lead through Enzo Fernandez's strike in the 24th minute. But a VAR-confirmed red card to Trevoh Chalobah in the 53rd minute turned the match decisively. From there, Brighton's substitutions, attacking combinations, and exploitation of their numerical superiority overwhelmed Chelsea. Danny Welbeck's late brace, 77, 90 plus 10, and Maxim de Kuyper's stoppage time strike, 90 plus 2, sealed a comeback that exposed Chelsea's structural fragility, lack of game management, and reliance on youthful inexperience. This analysis explores in detail the phases of play, tactical choices, refereeing moments, and psychological elements that explain Chelsea's collapse and Brighton's resilience. 2. First half, Chelsea's early control. The opening 45 minutes provided one of Chelsea's better halves of football this season. Lining up in a 4-2-3-1, they sought to dominate possession through midfield pivots Andre Santos and Moises Caicedo, with Enzo Fernandez pushed slightly higher in the number 10 role. João Pedro operated as the central forward, flanked by Estevão and Pedro Neto. Chelsea's strategy revolved around quick vertical passing. James and Cucurella provided width from fullback, while Fernandez drifted between Brighton's midfield lines, creating overloads against Baleba and Ayari. This produced both progression and unpredictability. Brighton, in their mirror 4-2-3-1, with Rutter up top, found themselves retreating into a mid-block, unable to apply their usual aggressive press effectively. The reward came in the 24th minute. After a sequence of short passes, João Pedro combined with Estevão on the right. A cutback found Fernandez arriving at the edge of the box, and his precise finish beat Verbruggen to give Chelsea the lead. The goal was a product of Chelsea's tempo and willingness to commit midfielders into advanced zones. Defensively, Chalobah and Hato held a high line, compressing Brighton's space. Mitoma and Minta, Brighton's wingers, struggled to isolate Chelsea's full-backs due to Cucurella's disciplined positioning and James's recovery runs. By halftime, Chelsea looked relatively comfortable. They had restricted Brighton to speculative efforts, maintained territorial control, and appeared to have the tactical upper hand. Yet, the underlying fragility was clear. Chelsea's attack produced few clear-cut chances beyond the goal, and their build-up relied heavily on Fernandez's movement. Without his creativity, the side lacked penetration. Brighton, meanwhile, were biding their time, aware that games against Chelsea often hinge on individual errors and moments of discipline. Number 3. The red card turning point. Chalobah, 53. The second half began with Brighton raising their intensity. Mitoma and Minta started to press more aggressively, while Rutter dropped deeper to connect play. Chelsea still had their defensive structure intact until the 53rd minute, when Trevoh Chalobah's mistimed challenge became the defining moment of the contest. Initially judged as a yellow, VAR intervened to review the tackle. On closer inspection, Chalobah's late contact and denial of a potential attacking move were deemed serious enough for a straight red card. For Chelsea, this was a devastating blow. Their defensive leader and organizer was gone, leaving 19-year-old Hato as the primary center-back in a high-pressure environment. The impact was twofold. First, Chelsea were reduced to 10 men, forcing an immediate tactical reshuffle. Santos was sacrificed for Action Pong in the 54th minute to restore a back four balance. Second, psychologically, the momentum shifted instantly. Brighton sensed vulnerability and began overloading wide areas, knowing Chelsea could no longer press with the same structure. This moment cannot be understated. Up to the red card, Chelsea had 58% possession and looked in control. Afterward, Brighton dominated possession, territory, and chance creation. It was the single decisive incident that flipped the tactical script of the game. 4. Tactical shifts. After the sending off Maresca's response to the red card was pragmatic. He reshuffled into a 4-4-1, with João Pedro as the lone forward and Fernandes tasked with shuttling between midfield and attack. Neto and Estevão were forced deeper into wide midfield roles, reducing Chelsea's counter-attacking threat. Brighton, in contrast, smelled blood. Manager introduced Wiefer in midfield, 55, to give his side more ball progression and added Danny Welbeck, 67, as a focal point. These moves dramatically altered the game's rhythm. Chelsea sat deeper, hoping to defend their lead and spring counters. However, their transitions broke down frequently. João Pedro was isolated, Fernandes overworked, and Caicedo unable to cover ground effectively against Brighton's fluid midfield rotations. Brighton focused their attacks down the left, with Mitoma and Kadioglu combining against a tiring James. On the opposite flank, Minte's dribbling stretched Cucurella. By pulling Chelsea's defensive block wide, Brighton created central gaps for Rutter and Welbeck to exploit. Between the 60th and 75th minutes, Brighton had over 70% possession and registered multiple shots inside the box. Sanchez was forced into two sharp saves, while Dunk began stepping into midfield to overload Chelsea's lines. It was no longer a question of if Chelsea would concede, but when. Number 5. Brighton's substitutions and momentum swing. The introduction of Welbeck was a masterstroke. His physicality and movement unsettled Hato and Akampong, neither of whom had the experience or positional know to track his runs consistently. Welbeck's equalizer in the 77th minute came from a flowing move. Mitoma drove down the left, cut inside, and delivered a teasing cross. Welbeck, peeling off the center-back, nodded home. The simplicity of the goal highlighted Chelsea's vulnerability. With Chalobah absent, aerial authority was lost, and Brighton's relentless delivery finally paid off. Brighton's other substitution, Gruda, added energy and unpredictability on the right. His link-up play with Mintev forced Chelsea's defensive block even deeper. The pressure was relentless. By contrast, Chelsea's substitutions, Gusto 63, Badiashile and Lavia, were reactive rather than proactive. Gusto offered fresh legs but struggled to contain Mitoma. Badiashile added some aerial presence, but the damage had already been done by Brighton's momentum. Lavia, meanwhile, could not influence possession in a game where Chelsea were already penned in. Momentum fully swung Brighton's way. Their confidence grew with every wave of attack, while Chelsea sank into desperation. 6. Chelsea's defensive struggles in the final stages. The closing stages illustrated a classic case of numerical advantage compounded by psychological fatigue. Chelsea's defensive block became ragged, lines too deep, and distances between midfield and defense stretched. De Kuyper's goal in the 92nd minute epitomized Chelsea's collapse. After a recycled attack, he surged forward unmarked from left back to smash home. Neto and Estevão, exhausted from defensive duties, failed to track his run. With Chelsea's midfield disjointed, the defensive line had no cover. The final blow came in the 90+10 minute. With Chelsea committing bodies forward in a desperate search for an equalizer, Brighton broke swiftly. Welbeck, timing his run to perfection, latched onto a through ball and finished clinically. The 3-1 scoreline reflected Brighton's ruthlessness, but also Chelsea's lack of composure. A pattern emerged. Once Chelsea were reduced to 10 men, their defensive organization disintegrated. The youthful backline could not withstand sustained pressure. Without Chalobah's leadership, Chelsea were repeatedly dragged out of shape. Number 7. Key player performances. Chelsea Enzo Fernandez, outstanding in the first half, dictating tempo and scoring the opener. Faded after the red card as he was forced into defensive work. Reece James showed glimpses of his attacking quality but struggled against Mitoma's relentless dribbling. His fitness remains a concern. Solid before his dismissal, but his red card directly caused Chelsea's downfall. Estevão, energetic and creative in the first half, but his influence disappeared once he was forced deeper. Brighton. Danny Welbeck, the super sub, his 2 goals and movement transformed the match. Kaoru Mitoma, constantly dangerous, especially after Chelsea went down to 10 men. His cross for the equalizer was pivotal. Lewis Dunk marshaled Brighton's backline, stepped into midfield when needed, and kept João Pedro quiet. Maxim de Kuyper, a tireless presence at left back, capped with a decisive goal. 8. VAR and refereeing decisions. Refereeing was central to the match narrative. Chaloba's dismissal after VAR review was correct in the letter of the law, but controversial for some supporters who argued the contact was not excessive. Yet by denying a clear attacking opportunity, the red was justified. Later, VAR declined to award Brighton a penalty after Malo Gusto's challenge in the box. Replays showed contact, but the referee judged it insufficient. That decision momentarily gave Chelsea hope, but Brighton's dominance made it irrelevant. Overall, officiating was consistent, but the decisions reinforced the perception that Chelsea are vulnerable to losing control in high-pressure moments. Number 9. Injuries and squad absences. Impact on Chelsea. Chelsea's ongoing injury problems once again influenced the result. Captain Reece James required treatment during the match, raising further questions about his long-term reliability. Pre-match absences reduced attacking variety and defensive stability. This forced Maresca to rely heavily on young players such as Hato and Estevão. While talented, they lacked the experience to manage a game of this intensity once the team went down a man. In contrast, Brighton's depth, with Welbeck, Wiefer, and Gruda coming off the bench, underlined the maturity of their squad planning. 10. Statistical overview. While full post-match stats vary, the trends were clear. Possession, Chelsea 56% first half, Brighton 65% second half. Shots, Chelsea 9, 3 on target, Brighton 18, 8 on target. Expected goals XG, Chelsea 0.9, Brighton 2.3. Corners, Brighton 8, Chelsea 3. Duels 1, Brighton 54%, Chelsea 46%. The numbers reinforce the story. Chelsea's early control translated into one goal but little sustained threat. Brighton's second-half surge overwhelmed Chelsea statistically and tactically. 11. Psychological and managerial aspects. The mental resilience of both teams diverged sharply after the red card. Chelsea appeared rattled, retreating into a defensive shell rather than reorganizing proactively. This hesitancy reflected both the inexperience of their squad and the lack of vocal leaders on the pitch once Chaloba departed. Maresca's substitutions were reactive. Instead of introducing a pacey forward to relieve pressure, he opted for defensive reinforcements. The message this sent was one of survival, not belief. By contrast, Brighton's bold introduction of Welbeck and Gruda shifted the narrative entirely. This managerial contrast underscored why Brighton emerged victorious. They embraced the chance to attack, while Chelsea shrank into damage limitation. 12. Why Brighton's system prevailed. Brighton's victory was not merely about numerical advantage. It was about their structural coherence. Their 4-2-3-1 became a 2-3-5 in possession, with fullbacks Kadioglu and De Kuyper pushing high, midfielders rotating fluidly, and wingers maintaining width. Chelsea, in contrast, became rigid. Their 4-4-1 low block invited Brighton forward, and without a counter-attacking outlet, they ceded initiative. Brighton's pressing traps forced turnovers, while their overloads stretched Chelsea's compactness. In short, Brighton's identity, aggressive, flexible, attack-minded, thrived under pressure. Chelsea's identity, still forming under a young squad and new coach, disintegrated under adversity. 13. Chelsea's wider issues. This defeat highlights recurring themes in Chelsea's season. Discipline. Red cards and lapses in concentration undermine otherwise solid performances. Lack of leaders. Too many young players, not enough experienced figures to calm situations. Injury crisis. Constant absences destabilize both selection and tactical continuity. Attacking inefficiency. Dominance rarely translates into enough goals. Reliance on moments from Fernandes is unsustainable. Psychological fragility. When faced with adversity, Chelsea collapse too easily. Unless these issues are addressed, Chelsea will continue to oscillate between promise and disappointment. 14. Conclusion. Lessons for both teams. Chelsea's 1-3 defeat to Brighton was not simply about a red card, though that moment was decisive. It was about the interplay of tactical discipline, squad depth, and psychological resilience. For Chelsea, the lesson is clear. Control must be converted into goals, and the team must develop greater resilience when reduced in numbers. Pochettino faces the task of instilling belief, improving discipline, and ensuring his young players learn quickly from setbacks. For Brighton, this was a statement when tactical adaptability, the depth of squad, and the hunger of his players to seize the initiative in big matches once again demonstrated why they remain one of the most feared giant killers in the league. The result may sting for Chelsea supporters, but it offers valuable insight. Without maturity, ruthlessness, and tactical flexibility, dominance can turn into defeat in an instant. Brighton showed all three. Chelsea, still searching for their identity, showed none after the red card.